The general conditions for validity of the chi-square goodness of fit test are that all expected counts should be at least 5, individuals in the sample should be independent of each other, those individuals should be a random sample of the population, and the data should consist of counts of a categorical variable. Starting with sample size, the condition that all of the expected counts be at least 5 is the condition that is needed so that the chi-square distribution can be used for calculating the p-value. For the data from the previous section, this condition is satisfied because all of the expected counts are larger than 5. The chi-square distribution is a convenient distribution to use in this calculation, but the chi-square distribution is a continuous distribution, while the distribution of a test statistic based on the counts of bees or counts of anything else will be a discrete distribution. A count is a discrete quantity, so a sampling distribution of a test statistic based on counts will be a discrete distribution. But as the sample gets bigger, the distribution of the chi-square test statistic does get closer and closer to the continuous chi-square distribution, and it turns out that if the sample is sufficiently large that all of the expected counts are at least 5, then the difference between the two distributions is not big enough to be important in most practical applications. If the sample size is small, there is a different test called Fisher's exact test that can be used. When the sample size is small, however, only very large departures from the null hypothesis are statistically significant, so in most practical applications it is better to try and get a larger sample. The independence condition in this example is the requirement that the behavior of each bee should be independent of the behavior of other bees. If a bee landing on a particular flower, for example, causes other bees to tend to also land on similar flowers, or if an initial group of bees depletes the nectar or the pollen in some set of flowers in such a way that subsequent bees are no longer attracted to those flowers, then the counts may not be independent, since the behavior of individual bees in the population may then be affected by the behavior of other bees. The randomness condition in this example is that the bees that come to the flower bed should be a random sample of the population. If the same bees are counted over and over, for example, or if only certain types of bees come to the flowers, then the sample might not be representative of the population. Finally, regarding the condition that the data be categorical, a categorical variable in general is a variable that identifies a class or category of something. In the data on bees attracted to flowers, the categorical variable is the color of the flower that attracts a bee. The categorical variable in a chi-square goodness of fit test must more specifically use a fixed set of mutually exclusive categories, and every individual in the sample must be counted in exactly one of those categories. In the example of bees attracted to flowers, for example, if one of the categories is a type of flower, such as a rose, rather than a color, then a bee landing on a red rose could be counted in 2 categories, which violates the assumptions of the test. The goodness of fit test also does not apply if the data is not actually categorical, such as if the data give the time that each bee spends on a flower rather than just the color. Time is a quantitative variable, so even if color categories occur in the data, if the quantity that is actually measured is time, then the variable is not a categorical variable. The complete set of conditions regarding sample size, independence, randomness, and categorical data apply not only to the chi-square goodness of fit test, but also to the chi-square tests described in the next section, and to a number of other hypothesis tests involving categorical data.